Welcome to This Day in His Story, created by American Heritage Worldwide, a reminder that every day holds something new to learn. Did you know that breathtaking views from the top of Colorado's 14,115-foot Pikes Peak inspired Katherine Lee Bates, poet, professor, and educator, to write the unforgettable words of a poem called America the Beautiful? Learn how more than 75 different melodies were written before Samuel A. Ward's version became the favorite melody to the song we sing today. Discover that America the Beautiful continues to unite Americans and has been quoted by U.S. presidents, sung at national events, and cherished in churches and communities across the nation, and that many people find it easier to sing than the Star-Spangled Banner. Imagine standing on this this massive
the man history
14,000-foot
blames for essentially starving America during the Great
your muscles
Depression
are probably screaming
is actually,
from this grueling
and
climb.
this is wild, the exact
But
same
you're
man
looking out
who
over a
single-handedly
landscape that is
saved
so
9 million
vast,
Europeans
just
from
so
starving to death
overwhelming
just a
that it
decade
literally
earlier.
forces you
Yeah,
to
it really
poem.
is the
Right.
ultimate historical
Now hold on to
paradox.
that feeling, but I want
And
you
that's
to
exactly
picture an
what we're
entirely
unpacking
different
today.
scene.
Welcome
You're
to our
at
deep
sea
dive.
level
We've
now,
got this
you're sitting on a
fascinating
ferry
stack
boat,
of sources
just
in front of
bobbing
us.
gently in the water
Biographical
on this
records,
leisurely
historical
summer
accounts,
afternoon.
humanitarian
And
texts,
out of
all
nowhere,
detailing
a
the
melody
incredibly
just drops into
contradictory
your
life
mind.
Just
of
completely
Herbert
out of the
Hoover,
blue.
the
Exactly.
31st president
And you
of the
put
United
that
States.
mountaintop
And
poem and that sea level melody
for
together,
those of you listening,
and you
our
get a
mission today is really to
masterpiece.
figure out
You
how
really
a
do.
guy
But
who
you
spent
also
the
get a
prime of his
map,
life
because
executing
today
these,
we aren't just looking at
massive,
how the song America
death-defying
the
rescue
Beautiful was
missions.
written.
Literally dodging
Welcome
bullets.
to
Literally
today's
dodging
deep dive,
bullets, yeah.
where our
And
mission
feeding
is
entire
to trace the
continents.
literal
How does
divine
that guy end
mandate
up
of
with
the
his name
American
permanently
continent
attached
that
to
this
those
song points
sprawling,
towards?
desperate
It's a
shanty towns
fascinating
known as
journey.
It
Hoovervilles?
really
There's a huge
is.
disconnect.
We are
I
going
mean,
to
it
be
just
looking
doesn't make
at
sense on the
historical
surface.
journals,
Well, we're really
the founding
looking at a
constitutions of the
classic
states,
tragic arc
and
here.
absolute
You have to think of it
scriptural
like a
facts from the
superhero
Pearl of Great
whose
Price.
absolute
Yeah, and we are
greatest
moving
superpower,
from this single,
which in Hoover's case was
serendipitous
this
moment of
unshakable,
inspiration
deeply
in
ingrained
1893
reliance on
all the
personal
way to the
volunteerism,
literal
suddenly
establishment of
becomes his
Zion
fatal
on the American
weakness,
continent.
like kryptonite.
Right,
To
because
understand
what
how
worked
those two
before
things
just
connect,
stopped working.
Exactly.
we really have to look
His
closely
reliance
at the
on community
mechanics of
action
how
worked
this nation's
perfectly
identity
for
was
localized
forged.
crises.
Let's
but
start with the words then.
It completely
So,
paralyzed
Katherine
him
Lee
when a
Bates was
systemic
born on
global
August
economic
12,
collapse happened
1859.
and
She
completely
was a
changed the
poet, a
rules of the game.
scholar, and
So to make sense
educator
of that
from
paralysis
Massachusetts.
later on,
And in
we
1893,
really need to trace
she
that
takes this trip
superpower
to
back to its
Colorado.
origin. So for you
And I have
listening,
to
we're
admit,
taking you back
when
to
I
the
first
beginning.
looked at this, I
We're
found
starting in the
myself wondering,
Midwest,
why
specifically
a
West
tired
Branch,
English
Iowa.
professor
Which is
on a
key
summer
to
teaching
understanding
assignment
his
is
whole
the one who
worldview.
ends up
Totally.
writing the definitive
So
anthem
Hoover
for
was
an
born on
entire
August 10th,
continent.
Well, the context of
1893 is
and he
really
actually
what
holds
makes
this
it make
cool
sense.
little
How
title.
so?
He's a
You have
very
to think about
first
what
US
travel
president
meant at that
born
time.
west of
This
the
was not a
Mississippi
modern
River.
flight
Which
where
is
you
a
just
fun
fall asleep
trivia
in
fact,
Boston
yeah.
and wake up in
Right.
Denver.
But the really important part is that he was
bypassing all
born
the
into a
geography.
Quaker family.
Oh, right, of
He was the
course.
second
She
of 3
traveled by
children.
train.
His father was a
And that means
blacksmith.
she was
but,
forced to physically
like a highly
move
respected
through
one,
the immense
known for
scale
his
of the
public
nation
service in the
at ground
community.
level.
And his
Which
mother
takes
was a
teacher.
teacher.
She
She
was
was
the one
literally
who
watched
really
the
heavily
wheat fields of
emphasized
Kansas just
honesty,
rolling by
grueling
for
hard
hours
work,
on end,
and
and living
Exactly.
an
She
incredibly
saw the
simple life.
sheer,
But then
unbridled
tragedy strikes,
majesty
right?
of the Great
Both
Plains.
of his parents passed
And
away
actually,
when he was
before
very
she even
young.
got to
so
the open
he's
country,
orphaned,
she
and he gets
stopped at
taken
the
in and
World's
raised by
Columbian
his aunt and uncle.
Exposition in
And
Chicago.
Which
that
was a
right there is
massive
the
deal
crucial
back then.
moment.
Huge.
That Quaker
She walked through
upbringing,
those
combined
gleaming
with
white
being
buildings,
orphaned,
just
is the
taking in the
fundamental
absolute
operating
pinnacle
system for
of
literally
human
everything
achievement
Hoover
and
does
industry
later in
at the
life.
time.
And
Because
that
Quakerism
juxtaposition
places
is
this
the key
massive
here.
emphasis
She isn't
on
just
community
looking at
support,
empty
right?
wilderness,
Yes,
right?
exactly.
She
It's
is
all about
observing
a
a land
shared
that is
voluntary duty
actively
to care for
being
one another. You
cultivated
don't
and
wait
built
for
upon.
some
Yeah, she's
massive
seeing both
government
sides.
entity to
She is
step in.
witnessing the
And Hoover,
realization of a divine
he
blessing in real
experienced the
time.
necessity of that
Really
safety
watching
net
humanity
immediately.
partner with
I mean,
the
he didn't
natural
just hear about
resources of the
community
continent.
safety nets
Okay,
in the
let's
sermon.
unpack this.
He
I like to
literally
think of her train
survived
journey
because
as
his extended community
almost like a
voluntarily
process of
stepped
physical
up
scrolling,
to feed him,
you know,
house him,
gathering
and
raw
educate him when
materials.
his
I like
parents
that
died.
analogy.
Right, and you
She's
have to
loading
imagine
up
how
the
that
cart,
wires
so
a
to
young
speak.
brain.
It
With the wheat of
completely
Kansas,
solidifies his worldview.
the
He grows
architectural
up
triumphs of
believing
Chicago,
that
the endless
private
horizons of the
volunteerism
plains.
is the
She
ultimate
collects all of this,
fail-proof
but it
solution
isn't a
to
poem
human
yet.
suffering.
Right,
Because
because
it's
it
just a
worked for
collection
him.
of
It saved his
experiences
life.
at that
Exactly.
point.
Exactly.
So he attends Quaker
Then
schools,
comes the physical
carries that
climb.
philosophy of practical
She and some other
community-driven
teachers decide to
problem-solving
tackle
right
Pikes
into his
Peak,
higher education,
which sits at
and
a staggering
fun fact,
14,000
when
feet.
Stanford University opened
incredibly
its
high.
doors for
Right.
the very first time.
They
in
hire a
1891,
prairie wagon,
Hoover
but the
was in the
terrain gets
inaugural
way too
class.
rough, so they
But he
literally
didn't
have
study
to
law
abandon
or
it
political
near the
science lines, which
top
is what you'd
and
expect
ride
from a future
mules the rest
politician,
of the
right?
way up.
He goes in and earns a degree in geology. Riding a mule at that altitude trains to become a mining engineer. In 1890s clothing.
Right. Oh my gosh, the
How
clothing.
does an orphan blacksmith's son physical from training experience end up as a globe-trotting geologist? She is physically exhausted. It honestly sounds less like a 19th century politician
He's just fully
and
present.
more like Indiana Jones. She's
it really
entirely
does. I mean, he takes that geology degree and just starts traveling the globe to locate and extract valuable
She noted how
mineral
incredibly
deposits.
tired she was when she saw the view. She felt this overwhelming joy. She wrote, "All the wonder of America seemed displayed there with the sea-like expanse."
They spent so much time immersed in different cultures that
so going back to that
Hoover
gathering
actually
metaphor,
learned
hitting refresh at the top of Pikes
Mandarin
Peak
Chinese.
becomes the crucible.
Oh, and I love this
she hauls
detail
all
from the
those raw
sources
materials
later
up to
in life when they were living
14,000
in the
feet,
White House.
and the
They would
sheer
literally
heat
speak Chinese
of that
to each other just to
breathtaking
have
view
private conversations,
melted all
so the
down
staff
into
couldn't
one
understand them.
singular unified
so
vision.
cool, but it makes you wonder.
She goes back to her room
how
at
did
the
those
Antlers
humble
Hotel in
Quaker
Colorado
values of living a
Springs
simple
and
life
immediately writes the
survive
words.
this sudden,
because she
massive
captured a
global
complete
exposure and wealth.
factual
Well, the thing is,
picture
his
of a
values
blessed
didn't
land.
disappear,
It
they
was the
just
perfect
scaled up.
synthesis
When you
of
think
the
about an
natural
engineer's
majesty that
mindset,
God
it's all
created
about looking
and the
at
human
a
endeavor
chaotic,
that was
raw
cultivating it.
environment,
Wow.
like, say,
And the
an
poem was
unmapped
published 2
mountain
years
range,
later,
and
on
figuring
July
out the
4,
logistics to extract
1895,
value
in a publication
create
called
order.
The Congregationalist.
Making sense of the chaos.
But you know, a poem is just
Exactly.
words
So
on a
when you
page.
combine that
To become an
mathematical,
anthem,
logistical
it
brain
needs
of a mining
music.
That's
engineer
the missing piece.
with that
And finding the
deeply
music was not a
ingrained
simple
Quaker
process.
mandate to
The
serve
poem was
the
published
community.
and people recognized
You get
its
a
power
man
immediately,
who looks at
but
global
it rejected
crises
almost
not
everything
as
it was
like
paired with.
political
It did.
tragedies,
There were actually
but
as many as
massive
75
engineering
different
problems waiting
melodies
to be
written
solved.
specifically
He didn't
for this
abandon
poem.
his simple
75
Quaker
separate
values. He
attempts.
just
I mean, I'm
expanded
trying
his
to imagine the
definition of
mechanics of
community
that.
It's a lot of trial
encompass
and
the
error.
entire
Why
world.
did 75
And
different
that
pieces of
mindset gets
music
put to this
fail to stick?
terrifying
Like,
physical
what is it
test in
about Bates's
1900?
poem that makes it
the
so
Boxer
difficult
Rebellion.
to
This
score?
part of his life is crazy.
It comes down to the
So he's
scale of the
stationed in
lyrics.
China, working as a lead
When you were
engineer
writing
for a
about
private
a
mining
sea-like
corporation,
expanse,
when this
and the
violent,
sweeping majesty of an
anti-foreign,
entire continent,
anti-imperialist
a
uprising
standard
breaks out.
marching
Absolute total
patriotic
chaos
tune
in the streets.
just
Right,
feels
and a typical
too small.
corporate executive would be on the
that
very
makes
first
sense. It
boat out
needs
of there.
weight.
Exactly. But Hoover and his wife stay.
The first known melody
Lou
applied to
immediately
the
goes to
poem
work
was by a
treating
man
the
named
wounded in
Silas
local
Pratt.
hospitals,
And
but it
Hoover just
didn't
completely
completely
takes
takes
over
over the civilian relief effort.
The lyrics demand
Because
a
he
melody that
treats the
feels
war zone
simultaneously
like an
massive
engineering
and
site.
deeply personal.
He realizes,
Which brings us
okay,
to Samuel
getting
A. Ward.
food to the
He was
hungry
an
isn't
organism
just
and a
about
choir
having
master
the
at
food.
Grace
It's
Episcopal
about
Church in
the
Newark, New
physical
Jersey.
mechanics
Right.
of
And this is where I
distribution
really
while
have
you're
to pause
actively
and
under
just
fire.
question the
He's
serendipity
literally
of
out there
history.
using his mining
Bates has her
expertise
epiphany
to
at
construct
14,000
defensive
feet,
barricades and
experiencing this
fortifications
terrifying,
around the
dizzying
civilian
altitude of the
settlements so
Rocky
they don't get
Mountains.
overrun.
Yeah.
Ward
And
finds
he's
his inspiration
personally
at
risking
sea
his
level,
life,
enjoying
like
a leisurely
running into
summer
active
day on a
crossfire
ferry
to
boat trip
rescue
from Coney
children
Island.
caught in the
opposite
fighting.
environments.
I mean,
The melody
why
just
does
drops
history
into his
class
head.
skip
He
the
goes back
action
to his
movie
home in
phase
New
of
York
his life?
City and writes
It's a great
down.
question. We always get this
I mean,
image
how
of
does the
early
gentle
20th
bobbing
century
of a
politicians
sea-level
as these
ferry boat
dusty,
possibly
high-collared bureaucrats
produced the
who just
perfect
sat behind
music
mahogany
for a
desks?
poem
Exactly.
born on a
But
massive
Hoover
mountain
was
peak?
on
What's
the ground
fascinating
in
here
the
is
mud,
the
building
contrast
walls
itself.
and
That is
pulling people to
exactly
safety.
why it
Yeah.
worked.
It seems like this
Yeah.
logistical
If Ward had
genius is
also been
exactly what
standing on
made
a
people
mountain
think he'd be
peak,
the perfect
The
president
music
later
might
on.
have been
Oh,
too
absolutely.
overwhelming, too
The Boxer
aggressive.
Rebellion
it would be
proved he could
competing with
manage
the word.
logistics in a
Exactly.
localized panic.
Bates's lyrics
But
provide
then the onset
immense
of World
scale,
War I in
but Ward's
1914,
ferryboat melody provides
that's
the
what
grounding
escalated
heartbeat.
his reputation to
The
a truly
gentle
global
rolling
scale.
rhythm of the water
Because
that he
when
felt on that
hostilities
boat
broke out
perfectly
across Europe,
mimics the rhythm
the
of
global
the
banking
sea-like
system
expanse
essentially just
of the
froze
plains
in
that
complete
Bates
span
off
of
the
the
mountain.
Right.
They
You had
balance each other
roughly
out perfectly. And I mean, the
120,000
craziest part of
American
this
tourists,
parallel serendipity is
businessmen,
that they
and
never even
students
met.
stranded
Never.
across Europe.
Ward died in
Their letters of
1903,
credit were suddenly
long
completely
before the song
useless.
attained its
Paper
national
money wasn't
stature.
being accepted for
The
ship
song,
tickets,
as we know it today,
and
was
commercial
officially
travel was
published
just
in
grinding to a
1910.
total halt.
He never
So
knew
the
what his
American
melody
consul
became.
general
It's a bit
looks at
tragic,
this
but
absolute
Katherine Lee
logistical
Bates did,
nightmare,
thankfully.
and
She
essentially
lived
hands
until
the entire
1929,
crisis
so
over
she
to Hoover.
witnessed the
And the
popularity of the
mechanics of how
song
he pulled
really
this
spread.
off
She
are
got to see its
mind-blowing.
impact.
She
Because
saw
he
it
didn't have a
transition
massive
from just a
government
piece of
agency
sheet
behind him.
music
Right.
No,
into
not
an
at all.
indelible
He had to
part of
privately
America's identity.
orchestrate a
And it
syndicate
truly
to
became
loan
a
people
cultural
money,
operating system
secure
of the
chartered
country.
ships,
People even argue
and
it's easier
coordinate
to
train
sing
schedules
and more
across
melodic
borders
than
that
the
were,
Star-Spangled
actively mobilizing for a world war.
It is the language that leaders reach for when they need to
back to the United
articulate the
States
soul
safely
of the
in
nation.
just 6
Take
weeks.
November 27, 1963.
It's incredible.
Right.
But honestly,
President Lyndon
Americans out was
Johnson
just
is giving
the
his
warm-up.
very
Right, the
first
Belgian
formal
crisis.
address
The
before a
real
joint session of
humanitarian
Congress,
masterpiece was his
the
work in
Supreme Court
Belgium.
justices,
So, following
and his
the outbreak
cabinet.
of the war, Germany
The country
occupied
is in
Belgium,
deep mourning.
and Great Britain
The stakes are
imposed a strict
incredibly
naval
high.
blockade
And what does he do?
to
He
starve
quotes,
out the
America
German war
the
machine.
beautiful.
Because
it
it offers
Belgium,
stability.
a country
When a
that
leader needs to
imported the
remind the
vast
nation
majority
of its
of its
foundational
food,
blessings,
was
they
suddenly
bypass
trapped.
political
They were
rhetoric and
caught
go straight
between
to
an
that
occupying
spiritual
army
touchstone.
and a
We saw
naval
the exact
blockade,
same thing 2
facing
decades
immediate
later. On November
catastrophic
14,
starvation
1983,
for 9
President Ronald
million
Reagan quoted the
citizens.
song
And the
during a
crazy
meeting
part
with
is,
South
neither the
Korean
British
President
nor the
Chin
Germans
Doo-hwan.
wanted to
Yes,
take
that
responsibility
was a
for feeding
powerful
the
moment.
Belgians.
And the story
Both
Reagan
sides were
told to give
essentially
context
using
to that quote
starvation
is just
as a geopolitical
staggering.
weapon.
He described
steps
this
into
deeply
this
spiritual
massive
experience he
standoff
had
and creates
while
the
at a
Commission
Sunday
for
morning
Relief
worship
in
service
Belgium.
with our soldiers.
And the sources say he effectively ran it like an
They were less
independent
than a mile
republic.
away
He really
from
did.
one of the
He had
most
his own
tyrannical,
flag, his own
heavily
fleet of
armed
ships.
regimes
He is
on Earth.
personally negotiating
And the
diplomatic
service
treaties
closed
with
with a
warlords,
choir
kings,
of
and
little
prime
orphan
ministers
girls
just to
singing
allow his
America the
private
Beautiful
through
in
the
our
blockades
language.
and the submarine
Think about the
zones.
mechanics of that moment.
He established this
You have the
incredibly complex
voices of
supply
innocent
chain that
children
ultimately
who have
procured and
lost
distributed
everything,
enough food
singing a
to
song
save
about
9
a
million
blessed,
people.
beautiful
He was
land.
literally
It gives me
feeding the
chills.
continent.
And they're doing it right
During
on
the
the
war,
doorstep
he
of
provided
extreme
so many
tyranny.
free meals to
It
European
brings the
citizens
spiritual
that
reality
the rations
of
were
America's freedoms
colloquially
into
known
sharp
as
relief.
Hoover lunches.
It isn't just a
Hoover
nice
lunch.
song. It is a
That's
statement
amazing.
of divine
Yeah, and this
protection and
administrative
blessing.
brilliance
I mean, think
caught
about
the
the last
attention of
time
President
you
Woodrow
listening to this right
Wilson,
now sang
who
this
then
song,
appointed
maybe at a
Hoover as
baseball
the head
game
of the
or a
United
fireworks
States
show.
Food Administration.
You probably didn't realize
Which
you were
presents
essentially
yet another
reciting a legally
massive
codified
logistical
mandate.
puzzle. Most people don't. Because now
Because
he has
this
to figure out
acknowledgement of
how
a
to
higher
divert
power blessing this
millions
land
of
isn't
tons
just
of
something
American
presidents use for
agricultural
speeches.
product overseas
It is literally
to
written
feed
into the
U.S.
laws
troops
of the
and
land.
European
It's a
allies.
fact.
Right,
All
but he has to
50
do it without
states
causing
acknowledge
food
God
shortages
in their
and
constitution on the
starvation.
American
It is the
home front.
foundational
And again,
truth
this
of the
solution was
nation,
purely voluntary.
woven directly into the
Instead
legal
of using
framework.
government force
It
to
isn't a
mandate
suggestion.
food rationing,
It is
which
the
he strongly
bedrock
felt
upon
violated
which
the
the
American
states
spirit of
operate.
freedom.
Let's
He
actually
launched
look at the
massive
mechanics of
PR
this language
campaigns
because it is
asking
striking.
Americans to
Alabama
voluntarily
in
conserve.
1901 begins
Meatless
their
Mondays and
preamble.
meatless Wednesdays.
We,
Oh,
the
that
people of
started
the
with
state
him.
of Alabama,
Yes.
invoking
He relied
the favor
entirely
and
on the
guidance of
cooperative
Almighty
nature of the
God,
American public,
do
and it
ordain
worked
and establish the
flawlessly.
following
The troops were
constitutions.
fed,
It's
the
very
allies
clear.
were
And
supplied,
Alaska
and the
in
domestic economy
1956.
held strong.
We,
So
the
by the
people of
time the late
Alaska,
1920s
grateful
roll
to God
around,
and to those who founded
Hoover
our
is
nation and
universally
pioneered this
viewed as
great
the
land.
master of emergencies.
Arizona in 1911 and
he's the
California
orphan
in
blacksmith's
1879
son
used
who
the
saved
exact
Europe.
same phrase.
And he's also
grateful
highly
to Almighty God
forward-looking.
for our
I mean,
liberties
before
and for
even
our
running for
freedom.
president,
But
he's
wait, I have to ask
actively
about the
involved in
consistency
organizing
here.
the
What do you mean?
brand new
You have
radio
California in the
broadcasting
late
industry
1800s,
and
right after
establishing
the gold
regulations
rush,
for the
and you have
budding
Alaska
civilian
in the middle of the
aviation
20th
sector.
century.
So he's the ultimate
How is the language
modernizer.
so identical
man who
across
can
totally
engineer a
different
solution to
eras
any
and
problem.
geographies?
Naturally,
Because
he
they
runs
aren't
for president of the
following a
United
linguistic
States in
trend.
1928.
They are
wins
legally
in an
anchoring their
absolute
state
landslide,
documents
and takes
to a
office in early
factual
1929.
spiritual
The whole
reality.
country
Got
believed
it.
they had
To
elected the most
establish
capable
authority,
crisis manager
these
in human
founders
history to
recognized they
guide
had
them
to
into a
acknowledge the
prosperous
higher
new
authority.
decade.
But of course,
that
the crisis
granted
that
them the
hit was
land
not
unlike
the first
anything
place.
the world had ever
You
seen.
see it in Delaware in
And
1897.
before we get into the
Quote,
economic collapse, there's this
through
physical
divine
event that happened
goodness,
early in
all
his
men
presidency that
have
is
by
almost
nature
too
the
poetic.
rights
Oh,
of
the
worshiping and
fire.
serving
Yeah,
their
it's like this
creator.
dark
And
foreshadow. for you
Hawaii,
listening.
establishing their
On Christmas
constitution
Eve,
in
December
1959,
24th,
wrote,
1929, the
"We,
White
the
House
people of
catches fire.
Hawaii,
Specifically
grateful for
the
divine
executive
guidance."
offices
It's
in the
everywhere.
West Wing.
It's like America
Right.
the
A
Beautiful
massive
and
four-alarm
the state
blaze.
constitutional preambles.
The fire
are
department
literally
has
the
to
terms
rush
of
4
service for
fire
the country.
trucks to the
That's
White
exactly
House
what they
on
are.
If
Christmas
you want to
Eve.
operate a state on this
And the fire
continent,
is
you have
so
to agree to the
intense,
foundational
so
terms
destructive,
that this
that
land
it
is
burns
guided
the
and
Oval
blessed by
Office
Almighty God.
completely to the
We even
ground.
see it daily
Nothing
in the
left
Pledge of
standing
Allegiance.
except the exterior
This raises
stone
an important
walls.
question.
Everything
though.
was vaporized.
When you have an
The
entire
files, the
nation
desks, the
built
infrastructure,
on this
Hoover and his aides
explicit,
are entirely
legally
displaced
codified
and have
spiritual
to operate
foundation,
out of temporary
what is
spaces
the ultimate
until a
purpose
remodeled
of that
West Wing
foundation?
finally
That's the
opens
real question.
in April
Because the
of
sources we are
1930.
And you
examining
just have
make
to
it
look at the
very
imagery
clear
there.
that
The
this isn't
physical
just about
destruction of the
historical
Oval Office
tradition.
burning down to the
It is
stone
a
walls
literal
perfectly mirrors
divine
what was happening
mandate.
to the American
So
economy
what does
at
this
that
all mean?
exact moment.
When we
Yeah,
talk
it's
about
almost
the
too on the
destiny of
nose.
America, we
Because
are
just
speaking in
7
poetic
months after
metaphors. We
Hoover
aren't
took
just
the oath of
saying
office,
America is a
the
nice
stock
place.
market crashed
not at
in
all.
October
God has
1929.
blessed us
The
with
Roaring
the great
Twenties
nation of
vanished
America for a
literally
very
overnight,
specific,
ushering in the Great
factual
Depression.
reason.
And the
And
statistics
to
from the sources
understand
are
that
just
reason,
horrifying.
we go straight to the
As
pearl
banks
of
started
great
failing
price.
and
Yes.
businesses shuttered,
Article of Faith 1.10
the unemployment rate shot
outlines
from a
the literal
baseline of
purpose of this
3%
land.
in 1929
It states
to a
as
staggering
absolute
23% by 1932.
that there will be a literal
Millions of
gathering of
Americans
Israel
had their
and
life
a
savings
restoration
wiped out
of the
in a
10
matter of
tribes.
days.
Here's where it gets
They
really
lost their
interesting
homes,
because of the
their
geographic
farms,
reality
their
that we
ability
really
to
need
feed
to
their
sit with.
children.
Zion,
You have a
the
nation suddenly defined by endless bread lines, massive unemployment, and families building makeshift shelters out of scrap wood and cardboard in public parks.
And here is the tragic irony
we are not
talking
about
at the very
a
beginning
conceptual
of the
idea
deep dive.
floating in
The man who orchestrated the Hoover
talking about
lunches to
physical
save Belgium suddenly finds his name mockingly
The New
attached
Jerusalem
to these
is slated
sprawling,
specifically for the
desperate
physical
shanty towns.
American
People started
continent.
calling
The
them
exact same
Hoovervilles.
physical
Right.
continent that
The guy who
Katherine Lee
rescued
Bates
children in
looked out
China
over from
and
the top
fed
of
Europe
Pikes Peak.
is now
Exactly.
presiding over his own
When she
starving
saw that
citizens.
sea-like
And
expanse
this is the
of the
part
Great Plains,
where you have to look at his
she wasn't
response, which was
just
to
looking at
actively
wheat fields.
oppose
She was looking
direct
at the
federal
future
governmental
physical
intervention
site
in the
of
economy.
New Jerusalem.
Yes.
And this
If
is
we
the
connect this
disconnect
to the
for
bigger
me.
picture,
I mean, if he had the
you
logistical
start to see
chops
how
to
Bates's
bypass
home
British blockades
accidentally
and
served
German
as the
U-boats,
perfect archetype architectural
Why couldn't he
blueprint
just
for this
deploy
theology.
the federal
Mind-blowing,
government to feed
honestly.
the people
Bates
in the
capturing the
Hoovervilles?
majesty of the
How
land.
did he justify
Ward's
It all goes
serendipitous
back to
music
the
giving it a
foundational
heartbeat. The
philosophy
50
that
state
built his entire
constitutions
life.
legally acknowledging
When he
God's
looked at the
guidance.
Great Depression,
These aren't just
he didn't
isolated
just see a
historical
lack of
events.
money.
They are
He saw a
aligned
test
preparations.
of the
They all
American
point to
character.
the same thing.
Interesting.
Because of these facts,
Hoover
as Christians,
firmly
we
believed
have a
that
duty to
top-down
maintain America
coercive
as a place
federal
for God and
intervention,
His Word.
you know,
We are the
government simply
stewards of
handing
the
out money or
continent where
taking over
Christ will
industries
personally reign.
would
That
completely
puts an
destroy the
incredible amount of
cooperative,
weight on our
self-reliant
culture. It
nature of the
transforms
American
America the
people.
beautiful
So it
from
wasn't a
just
lack of
patriotic
empathy on his
tune
part.
Not
into
at
a
all.
constant
He
reminder
believed the
of our
only
Christian
morally
duty.
sound way
And
out
that
of the
duty
crisis was
continues
a
to be
balanced
honored
cooperation
in
between
deeply
labor,
cultural
capital
ways.
investors,
Look at Ray
and the
Charles's
government,
famous
driven
rendition of the
primarily
song.
by
That
local
version's incredible.
volunteerism.
He took 4
I
minutes and
see.
47
He
seconds
wanted the
to
local
pour raw,
communities to
soulful
step up and
emotion
catch
into
the
those
falling
lyrics.
citizens.
He
Exactly
wasn't
the
just
way
singing
his
notes.
Quaker
He
community
was
in Iowa
bridging
stepped
that
up to catch him when he was
1893
working.
poem
Precisely. He
with
assumed that
modern
local
culture,
charities,
honoring
churches,
the
and wealthy
divine blessing
individuals
upon
would
this country.
voluntarily pool their
The song
resources to
resonates
provide
so
relief.
powerfully because the
Because
literal truth
remember,
of the
that
song
method had
resonates.
worked
It is a
flawlessly for him in
massive,
China.
sweeping
And during
narrative.
World War I,
We
And
started
with
today
the
with an
food
exhausted
administration,
poet hauling the
he
raw
was
materials
applying
of
the
American
ultimate
industry
tool
and
in his
agriculture
belt.
up a
The
14,000
fatal flaw,
foot mountain in
however, was that
Colorado
he
to forge
completely
a poem.
failed to understand the
We traveled
mechanics
to a choir
of a
master
systemic
catching a rhythm from the
macroeconomic
water on a
collapse.
because
ferry
a
boat in New
localized
York.
disaster,
Two totally different
like
worlds.
a war
We
zone or a
walked into the
famine,
halls of Congress
usually
with
leave the
presidents.
broader
We
global
analyzed the
economy
foundational
intact.
terms
Right.
of service
When he
in the
was
state
saving Belgium,
constitutions.
he was
We
raising
finally
funds from
arrived
wealthy
at the
donors in
literal,
America and
factual
Britain,
establishment of
whose bank
Zion
accounts were
on the
perfectly
physical
fine.
dirt of the
He was
American
pulling
continent.
resources from
Every
the
single
outside in.
piece of
But
that
in the
history
Great
points
Depression,
in
there
the
was no
exact same
outside.
direction.
It
Wow.
does.
Yeah.
So
So
we want to turn this over
was
to you.
collapsing when 23%
Based on
of the
deep
workforce
mechanics
loses their
and
jobs,
the literal
the
destiny
local
we've
charities
unpacked
dry up
today,
because their donors
what
are
is
suddenly
your
unemployed,
responsibility
too.
to
Right,
make
the
sure
churches
God
can't
is
run
remembered
soup
for the
kitchens
purposes of
because their
America?
funds were held in
In
local
what
banks that
ways
permanently
is
locked
America
their doors.
important to you?
Exactly.
Those are
Hoover
crucial
was asking
questions to
neighbors
ask.
to
We
pass
really
the hat
encourage
to
you to
pay for
take
rent,
these questions
but
and
the
share your
neighbors'
thoughts
pockets
with a
were
friend
completely
or a
empty.
family member.
He's trying
And
to fix
as
the
you
shattered
have this
system
conversation,
using the tools
consider
of the
this
old final
system.
thought.
And the historical
We
records point
established
out
that
that America the
Hoover
Beautiful
heavily
captures
blamed
the
the physical
physical
majesty
on
of a
international
land
economic
that is
forces
destined to
resulting
become
from World
the
War
literal
I,
New
matters that
Jerusalem.
were
So the next time you hear that
technically out
song,
of his
perhaps
direct
you should
control.
view it as a
And to
patriotic
be fair,
reflection
the initial
of the past.
crash and the global
Instead,
forces driving the
listen to it as
Depression
a
were
prophetic
indeed
description
largely
of
out
the
of his
Earth's
control.
renewed and
But his
paradisaical
rigid
glory that
refusal
is
to pivot,
factually yet
his
to come.
refusal to use the
The
massive
view from that
power of the
mountain
federal
peak
treasury
and the melody
to
from that
provide
ferry
direct,
boat
immediate
weren't just
relief to
capturing what
starving
America was.
citizens,
They
that
were
was a
capturing
conscious
exactly
choice
what it is
dictated by his
destined to
own
be.
moral boundaries.
He just couldn't bring himself to violate his
Thank you for
absolute
joining us
belief
for
in
this
private
day in his story.
volunteerism,
May
even
the
as
lessons of
Hoovervilles
yesterday
expanded.
inspire you to see God's
unwavering
hand today
philosophical
and to play
stance
your
cost
part
him
in
his
his
political
story now.
career.
For
In
more
the 1932
faith-based
election,
learning,
he is
visit
decisively voted out of office, losing in a massive
ahsworldwide.org,
landslide to
the
Franklin D.
homeschool for
Roosevelt.
faith
And
and
FDR
family.
enters the White House and implements the New Deal, which is basically the exact polar opposite of Hoover's philosophy.
Totally. The New Deal was all about unprecedented, massive, direct federal intervention in the economy, creating government jobs and federally funded safety nets.
So Hoover's single term ends in perceived disgrace, but his life was far from over.
No, he lived for more than 3 decades after leaving the presidency, passing away on October 20th, 1964, at the remarkable age of 90.
And that long post-presidency allowed him to leave several enduring marks on the country that have absolutely nothing to do with the Depression.
Right.
For instance, he is the president who officially signed the law making the Star-Spangled Banner the national anthem of the United States.
Which a lot of people don't know.
I didn't know it. And of course, the incredible Hoover Dam, this engineering marvel that opened in 1936, bears his name, which feels like a highly fitting tribute for a man who started his career as a mining engineer, organizing chaos into structure.
It really does. And beyond the infrastructure and the national anthem, the biographical sources we are drawing from present a really profound way to evaluate his overarching legacy.
Yeah, looking past this single term of his presidency and focusing on his lifelong dedication to human welfare.
Exactly. The texts specifically connect the vast scale of Hoover's humanitarian work directly to the core principles practiced by members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Right, the source material points directly to the New Testament, specifically the Savior's Counsel in Matthew 25.3536, which establishes the mandate to feed the hungry, clothe the naked, and visit the sick.
It is a universal framework for humanitarianism. The principles of providing both temporal assistance, literal food, shelter, and medical care, and spiritual uplift through welfare donations are practices that continue to benefit millions of people globally today.
So while Hoover's political philosophy couldn't solve a macroeconomic depression, His private actions as a human being perfectly embodied those scriptural mandates.
He spent the most energetic years of his life literally feeding the hungry and clothing the naked on a scale that very few individuals in human history have ever achieved.
It's an incredible legacy of action, and that actually brings up a vital reflection for you listening right now.
Yeah, we want to turn this over to you.
The source material asks us to consider how these principles operate in our own lives. Think about the impact of modern humanitarian services. In what ways do those services benefit the world today?
Have you ever actively contributed to an aid project, stepping up voluntarily to help a community?
Or, on the flip side, have you ever been the recipient of aid in a time of need? Hoover's early life is a testament to the fact that our survival and success are deeply dependent on the willingness of others to help.
We are entirely interconnected. And to close out our analysis of Hoover's life, I want to leave you with a thought concerning leadership, identity, and the danger of success.
A really poignant takeaway.
Yeah, Hoover's tragic arc poses a fascinating question. When does a leader's greatest moral strength, in his case, a beautiful, unwavering reliance on private volunteerism and community, become their ultimate blind spot?
Wow.
It forces us to examine our own lives. Are the most cherished personal beliefs and methods that have brought us success thus far keeping us from recognizing when the rules of the game have fundamentally changed?
That is a deeply unsettling but really necessary question. I mean, when the metaphorical Oval Office burns to the stone walls and the old tools simply do not work anymore, can you adapt or do you double down on what you know?
Something to really mull over on your own.
Definitely. Well, thank you for coming along on this deep dive into the complexities of history. Keep questioning your assumptions, keep learning, and we will see you on the next deep dive.